They call me righteous, the teacher of righteousness. I call myself a teacher. That is enough. I lead an opposition movement known as the Essenes, though many refer to us simply as the Enochians, due to the preoccupation by those who came before us with our ancient patriarch, the seventh in line from Adam, known as Enoch. Our forebears focused on the sin of the rebellious angels, who deserted their heavenly estate and came to earth, cohabiting with human women and spawning a race of giants. Nowadays, however, we focus on the complete predestination of all souls, both good and evil, on the path that has been predetermined for them.
Without a doubt, the most revolutionary development to enhance our knowledge of the ancient world, from which today's three monotheistic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, emerged, was the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. First stumbled upon in 1947 by a Bedouin shepherd lad searching for a lost goat, the scrolls contain not just the earliest copies of the biblical texts known to exist, but a whole library of non-biblical texts composed by a long-vanished Israelite sect known as the Essenes. One of the most important of these scrolls is known as the Covenant of Damascus, or the Damascus document. It was apparently composed by a sectarian elite group within the larger movement of Enochic Judaism. Here was a whole branch of the Jewish faith that completely disappeared in the end. But at the time, it was just as potent and widespread as the Judaism of the Jerusalem priesthood, which eventually morphed into the Judaism of today.
We who are the elite, within Essene Enochic Judaism, I in particular, naturally sought leadership of the movement. To this end, we both flatter and reproach our Enochic parent group. Listen now, all you who know righteousness and consider the works of God, for he has a dispute with all flesh and will condemn all those who despise him. For when they were unfaithful and forsook him, he hid his face from Israel and his sanctuary and delivered them up to the sword. But remembering the covenant of the forefathers, he left a remnant to Israel and did not deliver it up to be destroyed.
This is a key text for understanding the origins of the community who produced the Dead Sea Scrolls. In what amounts to a prologue of the document, we find basically a summary of the group's history, as well as a connection with the Enochic Judaism that came before. These few lines may in fact represent an allusion to the early Enochic text known as the Dream Visions, which came down as part of the larger Book of Enoch.
The angels of your heavens are now committing sin upon the earth, and your wrath shall rest upon the flesh of the people until the great day of judgment.
After picking up on the general theme of Enoch's dream visions, namely the deterioration and decay of Israelite society, the Damascus document goes on to reference the exile of the Israelites in faraway Babylonia.
And in the age of wrath, 390 years after he had given them into the hand of King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, he visited them. It was not just that the Babylonians, led by King Nebuchadnezzar, were evil and descended upon us. No, our own people transgressed the commandments, worshipping idols and whoring after other gods. Nebuchadnezzar was merely a tool of chastisement in the divine hand. We brought calamity upon ourselves, and that is why our great temple, built by King Solomon, was completely destroyed by fire. It was an age of divine wrath, which continues to the present day. But it was also divinely planned and ordained that at least some faithful Israelites would remain. A remnant. And he caused a plant root to spring from Israel and Aaron, to inherit his land, and to prosper on the good things of his earth.
The Covenant of Damascus depicts a new chosen people being ever present in the world as a divinely defined group. This is exactly what the Enochians believed in the wake of the great revolt of the Maccabee freedom fighters in the 2nd century BCE. and it's well established in Enoch's first dream vision when he begs God to preserve a plant of eternal seed. The message of the Damascus document is that Enoch's prayer has been answered and a new community born.
But with the remnant which held fast to the commandments of God, he made his covenant with Israel forever, revealing to them the hidden things in which all Israel had gone astray. He unfolded before them his holy Sabbaths and his glorious feasts, the testimonies of his righteousness and the ways of his truth, and the desires of his will, which a man must do in order to live.
This remnant was none other than the Essene Enochic group, which began as an opposition movement among the priestly elite class of the new, rebuilt temple after the return from Babylonian captivity. This was our parent group, but from it, a new, even more exclusive group has broken off, consisting of priests from the line of Aaron, namely the Zadokites, but also ordinary Levites and Israelites.
But even this special sect of the chosen among the chosen could not be the final goal of the divine plan, which was much broader still. The Damascus document isn't saying that the parent group of the Essene Enochians actually resided in Babylonia, only that its roots could be traced there. The people's exile was where an opposition priestly party took root. They didn't accept the Zadokite priesthood of the Second Jewish Temple, or that it was even legitimate. After the Maccabean revolt, the movement began to consider itself a separate and distinct sect of chosen ones.
And they perceived their iniquity and recognized that they were guilty men. Yet for 20 years they were like blind men groping for the way. For 20 years this Essene Enochic parent group struggled to find its footing, hoping but failing to supplant the priestly hierarchy in the new Second Temple. They recognized and repented of their iniquity, yet they stumbled blindly. Since I was not able to take command of this parent group, more drastic measures were needed. That was when a root of planting came forth. A special group, which I have in fact come to lead, took the decision to separate from the rest of the Essene Enochians.
We can think of the Covenant of Damascus as the seminal document of what became not just the larger Essene movement representing what we can call Enochic Judaism, but of an even more exclusive group who later retreated to the shores of the Dead Sea to build a small but important society at a place today called Qumran. We can think of it as the stage immediately prior to the founding of the Qumran communal settlement. The text itself was assembled from fragments found in the Qumran caves, supplemented by a later medieval copy of the same document found in the attic or geniza of an old synagogue in Cairo, Egypt. Its date of composition is open to question, but it most likely originated in the second half of the 2nd century BCE to the 1st century BCE. At this early date, the Essenes were still conciliatory toward the Sadducee party who ruled the temple. But the teacher of righteousness had by now emerged as the clear leader of this sect within a sect, who came to believe that they alone were the true Israel.
Early on, as I endeavored to take the leadership of the larger Essene Enochic movement, I faced internal opposition from a prominent personal adversary, whom we call the Scoffer. This preacher of lies broke away from the movement I was attempting to establish and causing a serious schism among us. And so I have faced persecution, not only from the ruling Hasmonean high priesthood in Jerusalem, but from our own ranks. For they sought smooth things and preferred illusions, and they watched for breaks and chose the fair neck, and they justified the wicked and condemned the just, and they transgressed the covenant and violated the precept. They banded together against the life of the righteous and loathed all who walked in perfection. They pursued them with the sword and exulted in the strife of the people. And the anger of God was kindled against their congregation, so that he ravaged all their multitude, and their deeds were defilement before him. This unfaithful group of Enochians share with us the belief that the Judaism of the Second Temple has been contaminated, but they are far too willing to compromise. Indeed, there is a boundary of faith which our forefathers have established, and they have removed it. Those in our movement also call them the House of Peleg, which means division, code language for the Sadducees. And God observed their deeds, that they sought him with a whole heart, and he raised for them a teacher of righteousness to guide them in the way of his heart. And he made known to the latter generations that which God had done to the latter generation, the congregation of traitors, to those who departed from the way. This was the time of which it is written,
Like a stubborn heifer, thus was Israel stubborn.
when the scoffer arose who shed over Israel the waters of lies. He caused them to wander in a pathless wilderness, laying low the everlasting heights, abolishing the ways of righteousness, and removing the boundary with which the forefathers had marked out their inheritance, that he might call down on them the curses of his covenant, and deliver them up to the avenging sword of the covenant.
There were many among the Enochians who had no interest in embracing a more radical opposition to the priestly rulers in Jerusalem. It was the teacher of righteousness who led a new chosen people, the elect within the elect, to separate completely from the rest of Israel. But very few were prepared to follow this pathway. The larger Enochic movement was by no means willing to break away entirely from the Sadducee priesthood, much less from the people as a whole.
Taken as a whole, the Covenant of Damascus can be considered a broadside against the entire house of Israel. Yet, it's still somewhat conciliatory when it comes to the house of Peleg. Reconciliation is still a possibility, since each is to be judged by his own merits.
And every member of the house of separation who went out of the holy city and leaned on God at the time when Israel sinned and defiled the temple, but returned again to the way of the people in small matters, shall be judged according to his spirit in the council of holiness.
In the end, the Damascus document is a clarion call to join a more radical version of the original Essene Enochic movement, whose roots were in Babylonia, codenamed Damascus, and which represents a new covenant.
And thus shall it be for all among the first and the last who reject the precepts, who set idols upon their hearts and walk in the stubbornness of their hearts. They shall have no share in the house of the law. They shall be judged in the same manner as their companions were judged who deserted to the scoffer, for they have spoken wrongly against the precepts of righteousness, and have despised the covenant and the pact, the new covenant, which they made in the land of Damascus. Neither they nor their kin shall have any part in the house of the law.
No deviation from this way will be tolerated, and only the elect among the elect, those who are truly chosen as the new Israel, will in the end be saved. It's a fearful exclusivism and designed to make even the faithful tremble. Such concepts would eventually inspire multiple expressions of ancient Judaism, including, among others, the Judeo-Christians. There's so much more to come.